Good morning from Nugget Shooter Journals. Today we're going to talk a little bit about other things we find in the desert, or, well, the desert, or wherever we happen to be prospecting for gold nuggets with a metal detector. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, there's relics out there and stuff like that. I think one of the coolest things that I find along with gold out there is meteorites. Yeah, meteorites. There's several areas that are called strewn fields, and a strewn field is an area where a meteorite has come apart after entering our atmosphere and scatters pieces of itself all over the landscape. And Arizona, being arid and open, is perfect for hunting meteorites. And there's a lot of areas out here where there's been finds. I even have one of my own finds I'll go to in a second. But the very first meteorite I ever found that I knew was a meteorite was at a place called Gold Basin, which is in northwestern Arizona. And it's a real cool area. We found a lot of gold there. But back in the day, we used to hear these pesky hot rocks all the time. And we'd be hunting out there on the flats, and there'd be hundreds of these things. And we piled them up in piles and put them in bushes and stuff like that. And they look a lot like this right here. Yeah. And it's not real fancy, is it? No, it's not. And this, my friends, is a piece of Gold Basin meteorite. And it's a stony iron, chondrite. And I met a guy named John B. years ago. And we were talking about hunting out there. And he was telling me a story about finding him and some of his friends were out there working. And they found this strewn field. And they were working it pretty hard and got it identified and got it registered. And he was telling me how they were finding all these meteorites in piles and in bushes and stuff. And I said, what? He goes, yeah. And he goes, they look like this. And he had one with a little window cut in it. And inside you see very small chondrules and pieces of nickel, iron. And so it's spotted on the inside with little bits of metal. Really pretty. And I'm not sure where that one with the window cut in it is. I have it around here somewhere. I looked for it but couldn't find it. So we're looking at the real deal this morning. And that's what they look like. Okay. And another good place is Franconia. And Franconia is in western Arizona, right along the 40. And by Lake Havasu in that area. And this is a piece of Franconia meteorite. All right. That's a nice piece. That's about 300 grams. And I don't know, at a few bucks a gram, it's a nice little find, right? And this piece is actually off of this one. It broke off it. And it fits right in here quite nicely. Okay. And these are both stony irons. And well, chondrites, I should say, but they have little flecks of metal all through them when you cut them. But look how smooth that is. Okay, that's called a fusion crust on there, and it's mixed with desert varnish, so they can be hard to spot. A lot of people would say, "Ah, it's just another hot rock," and kick it out of the way. Well, I don't do that anymore. If I'm not sure on something like this, I'll out there in the field, I'll rub it on another rock or file it and see if I can see flecks of metal on the inside. And that right away is a dead giveaway that it's a good chance that it's a meteorite. And they can be quite valuable, especially if you find one that nobody else has found before in a new area. It's a little complicated. You get the meteorite and you got to go to a place and have it classified where they analyze it and tell you how much iron's in it, how old it is, and similar stuff to that. I'm no expert on this stuff, but I do know enough to check a rock when I see it. Now, the cool thing about Franconia is you can see little lumps in this. And those are little lumps of metal. And this meteorite happened to have quite a bit of metal in it. And these little guys right here are iron meteorites from Franconia. So as this thing was coming in, these little bits of iron were melting and plopping off and falling along with the other parts of the meteorite. And it was an interesting strewn field, and a good friend of mine, Jim Smaller, spent a good part of his time trying to prove the fact that these weren't just metal scrap, that they're actually parts of the meteorite. And eventually it was accepted that that's probably what they were. And this is an iron meteorite. This one's very heavy. This one's several pounds. This one's not from Arizona. It's not one I found. This is a Campo. And this is from Brazil, I believe, is where it came from. And this came down. It was huge. It was huge. And there was tons and tons of this stuff dropped into the ocean. And oh, believe it or not, it sells for around 50 cents a gram today. And making this piece worth quite a few bucks. And it pays to pay attention out there. And that goes back into the times I've always told people, you know, you really need to identify every rock you see or find out there, at least enough to know you're not walking away from something valuable. And until the day I met John Blunnert, and he told me about meteorites and that they could be found with a metal detector, I had no clue. And to this day, I have no clue how many I may have walked away from. And kind of the embarrassing part of that is I've always told people to identify every rock they see that they're not sure about. You've heard me say that before. Well, back then, when I was younger, I wasn't listening to my own self-talk. And I was walking away from stuff like this. And, oh, back in those days, I might have thought this was just another hot rock. And the interesting thing about meteorites is they don't leave a streak on a streak plate. And maybe the desert varnish on the outside will at first, but after that, it doesn't leave a streak. You know, most of these are like 4.5 billion years old. And it kind of makes you sit down and wonder when you find something like that, you know, where did it come from? How long has it been on the earth? And I went through a little phase where I hunted hard for meteorites. And I went several different places, and I found quite a few. And I would show you more, but unfortunately, I've sold a lot of what I found over the years, and like I do with nuggets. I mean, I hunt it for make a few bucks and I sell them. And I found one that was named Trilby Wash, and that was an interesting day for me. A friend of mine, Jim, and took me out to a patch he'd found, a gold patch. And we call a patch an area where you find more than one nuggets. Okay, and Jimmy took me out there to this spot, and he said, "Well, I'm going to go over here and hunt my area." He goes, "But there should be gold all around here." I walked over a little hill. It was early in the morning, and I got a booming signal. I had a gold bug too back then, and I got a booming signal on the gold bug. And I looked down, and there was a rock about, I don't know, twice the size of this one, laying on the ground, and that was my signal. Hot rock, right? So I got to looking at that hot rock, and it looked funny to me. It had a smooth crust on it like this does, and it just didn't look right to be a terrestrial rock from Earth. So I went up to the truck and I called Jimmy and I said, "Hey man, I think I got a meteorite over here in this other gulch." He says, "No way." I said, "Yeah, I think so." And we didn't have a file or anything, and it wasn't rubbing real well on the rocks that were out there. So I took a matchbook and used the striker part, and I rubbed on the flat side of that thing, kept rubbing, wore that one out. So I got another matchbook and kept going with it, and then wetted it. And you could see the little specks of metal in there. And he looked at me and he says, "It is a meteorite, isn't it?" I said, "I think so." So I called my buddy John up. He was real proud of me for finding my first one that, you know, I found that nobody else had identified or seen. And he set me up with Laura Bleacher at ASU. And we went through the testing process, and lo and behold, it was a meteorite. They let me name it. I named it Trilby Wash. Now you can look this up online. Do a search for Trilby Wash meteorite, and you'll see pictures of it and, from the owners that have the parts. And it turned out that meteorite was quite valuable. It was worth about $16 a gram. And I ended up with about, I don't know, 600 grams total of that. And that was kind of cool. So there's been other pieces of it found out here at San Domingo. And that one was found just shy of mile marker 5 off of Castle Hot Springs Road, right here by me. And there's been other pieces found, and it's a desired meteorite. It has a strange reddish interior, and just beautiful inside, and it makes a nice collector's piece. You know, and we get relics too, like these silver spoons and stuff. There's no explanation of why they're even out there, but it's really cool to be able to find actual meteorites. And my friends, I suggest you keep your eyes open and your mind open, and when you find a rock you're not quite sure of, identify it. And I've said this over and over, And if you're not sure, take it home and double check. Go through your rock books, maybe do a streak test, maybe file off an end of it and have a look, and you may surprise yourself and find something quite valuable and get your name put on it for all time. I've got pieces of trilby wash in 3 or 4 different museums, and several collectors have pieces of it. And I'm pretty proud of that find. I thought that was really cool. But this is just a short little video, and I just like to be able to open your guys' eyes to the stuff we find out there. It can be quite an adventure. Never walk away from something you're not sure about. And there's other minerals out there that can be quite valuable that can be found with a metal detector that a lot of people just walk away from. So always identify your finds. Try to be sure of what you had. And I'll maybe put some more information up on locations of some of the strewn fields in Arizona. But if you do a search for Arizona meteorite strewn fields, you'll find several in the state. And a lot of these areas are open to hunt. And out there, you're not looking for geological formations or anything, and most of them are laying right on the surface. You just walk around until you get a beep and you dig it up or pick it up and see if you got a meteorite. And Franconia is wide open. You can go out there anytime you want. You get off, I believe it's mile marker 13, right there by the turn to Lake Havasu. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this. It's kind of cool, some of the other things we find out there. And it keeps me busy, and it's my passion to go out there and hunt. So anyway, if you like these videos and you want to learn a little bit more about what's out there in the desert and elsewhere and what we hunt and how we do it, stick with me, my friends, because there's going to be a lot more coming. And for right now, like, subscribe, ring that bell. Nugget Shooter out.